Hello everyone, welcome to What If Quirkless Deku got Albedo's Ultimatrix and became Supreme Anti-Hero Part 4. Before we start, please go support Albedo 13003 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Deku is a male. Chapter 22, Attack on the USJ. Narrator POV. What happened? Where am I? Kane asked, slowly opening her eyes. Welcome back to life, Izuku said from beside her, sighing heavily. Oni-chan? Kane exclaimed, surprised to see her brother sitting next to the stretcher where she is. Don't you remember anything of what happened? Izuku asked, raising an eyebrow. Kane shook her head in confusion, until she noticed where she was and her current state. She blushed heavily when she realized that she was naked and wrapped in bandages. Luckily, a blanket covered her entire body. At that reaction, Izuku just sighed and shook his head. You stepped in the way of a bullet headed towards me, Izuku said, causing Kane to open her eyes wide. Are you okay? Kane asked worriedly and turning to look at Izuku in search of any wounds. No, I mean if. He lets out a sigh. A heroine cured me, said Izuku without any emotion. I understand, Kane said to see how Izuku lowered his gaze. After that, there was a silence that lasted for whole minutes. Kane was about to break it, but Izuku got there first. I don't forgive you, at least not that easy, Izuku said directly and seriously. I understand, after all, isn't it that easy? Kane asked after having a brittle and distressed voice. Both his face and emotions and feelings of pain and anguish, as well as regret, changed to only confusion and restlessness. Yes, look at it like those dating games. Wait a moment. He stands up and faces her. Thanks for saving my life, but I never asked you to. I didn't need your stupid help. Besides, things aren't that easy. Even these days you can barely save a person with a shot to the head. Yours wasn't a big deal considering the various things that kept you alive and saved you. He sighs again at the sight of Kane's now anguished face. But still, like I said, thanks for saving my life, and I'm going to give you a chance, Izuku finished saying, maintaining a serious and understanding expression the whole time. But you didn't tell me anything else just now. Apart from what I did to you is unredeemable, Kane said sadly, to which Izuku just nodded. You're right, but I'm giving you a chance to start from scratch. The Midoriya brothers are dead, without a doubt, so I want to start all this again, but with conditions, Izuku said seriously, to which Kane smiled, but that didn't last long to see the serious face of her older brother. What would those conditions be? Kane asked with contained joy, to which Izuku sighed. 1. You and I, we are nothing, we are complete strangers. 2. You will have to earn my trust. Every mistake and achievement will count as I please. If you throw away the ring for the cake that I asked you for, consider that I will never trust you again and that you failed. 3. You will have to do what I tell you no matter what it is and however it is, you will obey me. 4. This will be kept a secret between you and me. No one has to know what happened here and how it happened, Izuku finished saying seriously. Kane gulped. Well, I accept, Kane said, looking at Izuku with renewed motivation. It was a small chance. Even taking into account the third condition, he doubted that his brother would do anything wrong. After all, he is the best person he knows and his wish is to become a hero in any way. Well, if it's not too much trouble, I'll be leaving, Izuku said before turning around and starting to leave the room. Where are you going? Besides, why so fast? I barely woke up, Kane asked, surprised and incredulous. I don't know you. Besides, I have important things to do, said Izuku before leaving the room without any emotion. At that reaction, Kane sighed sadly and dropped her head in resignation. Meanwhile, Izuku headed towards the hospital exit, passing through the hallways and avoiding being seen by anyone. As he did so, he pulled out his phone and saw the message that came to him 2 hours ago. You have an important mission to do. The one used by everyone, all for one. Izuku just sighed. Once outside the hospital, he walked a few kilometers away, spending the last few minutes walking before entering an alley and his silhouette being enveloped in a red light, becoming a dark master, wearing his red hood with white lines, white edges and white straps, a hood covering his jam for a face in darkness, where he wrapped himself in his matter and disappeared from the place. Some time later. What did you call me for? Izuku asked seriously, even though he had become a dark master. Shigaraki wants to attack the UA. Kurojairi responded with discomfort and fear. He never understood it, but whenever Izuku uses that transformation in front of him, he feels insignificant like an ant larva. It's like the first time he met All for One, but to the 10th power. Where is it? Izuku asked coldly. He's getting ready, so he's not here right now, Kurojairi said, trying to calm down, feeling Izuku's presence increase. At that, he saw what he assumed was a sigh from the alien, who returned to his human form, wearing his civilian clothes. Izuku just sat down on one of the bar chairs and extended his hand. Instantly Kurojairi slid a glass of chocolate milk which was taken by Izuku. What is your plan? Izuku asked curiously. Attack the USJ when they least expect it, Kurojairi replied, to which Izuku sighed in annoyance. And how do you plan to carry that out? Izuku asked, raising an eyebrow. Attacking. I know what you're thinking, there's a plan. Kurojairi answers and clarifies what he said to see the teenager's incredulous face. Well then explain it to me before I go get ready, said Izuku, sighing, to which Kurojairi sighed. Some time later. The doors to Izuku's laboratory opened, and he entered. What he found was not at all to his liking. Piles of papers, bags or small and insignificant scraps of junk food are scattered all over the place. On the couch, which at this point is a sacred place, a sleeping Albedo wearing a sleeveless shirt and baggy pants. And as stated, the chair is a sacred place, since practically everything within 5 meters of its diameter is neat and completely clean. Izuku's eyebrow flickered in anger before he sighed heavily to calm himself down. His Ultimatrix changed from its watch form to its glove form. Once it did, Izuku turned the dial, causing Albedo to snap her eyes open and turn to look at him in great anger. Son of a hitch dash. The AI didn't finish speaking, as her body literally disintegrated when she herself was temporarily deactivated. By the Celestial Sapian, this is a dump, Izuku said before turning to see all the mess Albedo made without him. He just walked through all the mess and reached a table where some mechanical arms were finishing something. At least the idiot didn't do anything but make a mess, and she didn't touch anything in the laboratory, said Izuku, sighing in annoyance, watching as the mechanical arms finished what Izuku took. A chip composed of a higher quality component. Once in hand, Izuku turned into malware, wrapping his hand around the chip and updating it, before returning to his human form. Once that was done, it showed the chip in a better, updated state, also including the Ultimatrix symbol, its lines glowing in a crimson light. The Ultimatrix showed its core where Izuku inserted the chip. The dial turned and flashed blue, before turning completely blue and spinning faster, while its light increased. System update completed. The incorporation of new systems and functions has been carried out successfully. No failure or bug was found due to incompatibility between programs and codes. Albedo.exe voice spoke before the blue light turned red again, slightly more powerful than it is originally. After a few seconds, Albedo appeared next to Izuku, with a face of absolute annoyance. Although she had a free change, her eyes, now different from those of a normal human, resembled the on-off button of an identical PC or device. How's the new body? Izuku asked, tilting his head. Albedo blinked, before her eyes showed that in less than a second a whole chain of codes passed, to which she changed her anger into surprise. Since when did you have this plan? I mean, I didn't see you working on this update and improvements, Albedo said, surprised and incredulous. Izuku just pointed with his flea backwards. She just tilted her body to look at Izuku's side. There was the virtual simulator, which confused her even more. When and how? I was attentive at all times, Albedo asked, confused. I left a clone in it, while we did tests and analysis on your physical body. Once he did the programming and completely designed the chip where the new updates would be, we became one again, and I have been updating it these last few days, and then I downloaded everything to the central database of the laboratory yesterday. Where once there. The printing arms began to build the chip, and by sheer luck it was finished a few minutes ago. Izuku responds calmly, to which Albedo sighed. Let me know when you do something. It doesn't feel good not knowing what to do, Albedo said with annoyance. Izuku just chuckled and brought his hand to his mouth, to elegantly cover up. After that I caressed the girl's head and she blushed. I'll keep that in mind. Now, we have work to do, Izuku said with a smile, before being enveloped by a scarlet light, transforming once again into Dark Master. With one difference, his cloak/hood had changed. Its red hue was replaced by black, while the white by a phosphorescent red, now forming the Ultimatrix symbol on his chest. In the darkness of his hood, the light of his gem could now be seen as it now shone even brighter. He wrapped himself in his matter and disappeared from the laboratory, along with Albedo. Some time later. I'm sorry about what happened to your sister, Gwen said to Izuku. Repeat it until you believe it, said Izuku, shaking his head at the Yuigen's side. What happened? Your bad mood is noticeable from miles away, and that you now have several moral problems, said Gwen, looking at Izuku, who blinked in surprise. Sometimes you're scary. Sighs. It's just things I talked about with Kane. It's not a big deal, said Izuku before closing his eyes. I understand. I hope you managed to solve whatever problem you have. It's obvious that it's a weight on your shoulders, Gwen said calmly, now turning to look ahead. Gwen, can you feel other people's feelings? Izuku asked, tilting his head. I thought you knew that, Gwen said, seeing her friend confused. Nope, I never knew you had apathetic abilities related to the psychic. Izuku, somewhat thoughtful. That is called simplified apathy, or in simple cases telepathy, which is confused with telekinesis, Gwen explained, to which Izuku nodded. It was obvious, but it's better to make sure. I have to make an inhibitor to prevent the Anodites from being able to see what I feel. That only gives them an advantage over me. I could also start to control my emotions, but for that, I have to understand them completely. Izuku thought with his eyes closed. Looking ahead, he saw how each class got on a bus, to which Izuku only said goodbye to Gwen and got on his corresponding bus. Ready for this trip? I asked excitedly. Yes, this is it, Izuku answered calmly. Why are you never excited about anything? May pouted, making Izuku laugh. It's not a big deal. I mean, we're literally going to go to the place several times, Izuku answers calmly, while settling into his seat. If you say so. Now moving on to a much more important topic. Her lips parted, forming a big smile that made Izuku smile in anticipation. Have you already given birth to your babies for today? May asked, causing everyone present to jump, except for Izuku and the teacher. Ha 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 ha. Izuku dropped into his seat while laughing like crazy, while leaning back on the thighs of a confused and puzzled May. Some time later. God, it looks like today is going to be a nice day, said Izuku, getting off the bus while wiping away a tear of laughter. You can say that again, May exclaimed excitedly next to him. You two, stop flirting, you're falling behind, said Power Loader to his two students who followed him. It didn't take long for this to happen in front of the USJ. Once there, the teachers, Power Loader and Aizawa, gave their students permission to enter. Welcome, it is a great pleasure to have you all here present. Greetings from heroine number 13 to all the students. It's 13. How I love the 13th heroine, exclaimed Uraraka to see her number 1 hero. You're not the only one. Now that I realize it, isn't that Kane's friend? Izuku thought curiously, looking at her out of the corner of his eye. That's right, it's me, Heroine 13. It's a pleasure to have you all for today's class, 13 said happily, to which several nodded. Excuse the lack of respect, but why are we here? Izuku asked calmly. Was that question? Albedo's voice resonated in his head, which was speaking to him from another location that is not his Ultimatrix that is deactivated. Someone had to ask the stupid question, aside, so I get them to not take me into account much and to underestimate me. Remember that I have to divide and distance any relationship with my personality and the personality that Red Clock has. Izuku answers in his mind through his medical patch-shaped visage. It's good that you asked the question. They are here to train and see what their quirks are capable of, as well as, use them safely and in the best way. A powerful quirk is useless for hero work. It's not just about hitting villains, but also about saving people and rescuing their lives. That's what they are here for, in these facilities designed for various feasible scenarios. They will be properly trained to be able to deal with each one of them and manage to rescue civilians in a practical and safe way. 13 explained, causing the excitement of almost all the students. Okay, thanks for explaining, Izuku said with a smile. Wow! They even have fake villains! Kirishima exclaimed with stars in his eyes. Looking into the distance and at the base of the stairs, the mist of Kurogiri was making itself present. From it, Tamura and Anomu emerged. But next to them, a silhouette appeared. Red Clock. Ben muttered with furrowed zeal as he watched the villain of the Red Clock from a distance. This seems entertaining. Seijo Izuku with a distorted voice. His armor had been improved and perfected, now having hundreds of pieces that form more details, now being mostly silver and dark silver, with black lines and small neons on the joints or important parts of the body. His helmet matched the silver of the body, having a screen that forms a scary smile and sharp eyes, which emit a red trail. Above all, a black trench coat with a hood that has rabbit ears. Ben looked around, not finding Red Clock's Omnitrix anywhere on his suit, only seeing the closest thing to it, being the Ultimatrix symbol, which is more of a mark with depth as if it were a hole, with a red light with energy particles emerging from it. But he knew very well that that was not the villain's Omnitrix. There he comes, Kurogiri, close the entrance and scatter the villains, Tamura said coldly, watching Aizawa coming towards his group. Is that your plan? PFF, pathetic, Kurogiri, take the villains from this area, leaving me, Tamura and the failed mad doctor. Red Clock mocked with amusement, although even with his distorted voice, Tamura and Kurogiri noticed the disappointment in his voice. How about you go away, bastard? Said Tamura, beginning to scratch his neck. Stop scratching your neck. I have no desire to be your doctor when this is all over, Izuku said with annoyance. Shut up! Tamura exclaimed in annoyance. At that moment, and due to his distraction, Aizawa held him by the neck with the bandages he uses as a scarf. Izuku just sighed before more pieces formed on his left forearms and an energy blade was projected, then cutting Aizawa's bandages. Damn bastard, no kill dash! Tamura exclaimed, but his mouth was covered by Izuku's hand. He brought his hand to his mouth as he undid his energy blade and raised a finger, making the sign for silence, his face showing his charismatically expressed expression beneath his helmet. SHHHHH, I'll take care of it. I have to break his face for the last thing he did to me. Mark 1 is still crying in the corner with the other scrap metal for what he and that rabbit did to him, Izuku said with a loving smile before turning around hastily and starting to walk towards Aizawa, who got ready. Click. Everyone in the place where the small group of villain and the hero were, heard the click that came from Izuku's suit. It disappeared in a blur and hit Aizawa in the stomach, causing him to spit saliva and run out of air from the groan of pain he made. What the hell? Even if I saw him move, I didn't have time to react, Aizawa thought with great pain. He saw a crimson flash in the helmet's eyes, and then, in the form of a claw, Izuku connected a blow with his other electrified hand to Aizawa's stomach after withdrawing his other arm, causing him to vomit blood. Before he fell to the ground, Izuku grabbed him by the neck and brought him closer to his face, looking at him with hatred. Do you know something, Shoyuda Aizawa? I hate it when they touch and break my things, and you pathetic piece of shit, did it, and that bucking rabbit too. Both of them broke my first battle suit, and even though I hate it, I respect it. They hurt me, but as you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, said Izuku, throwing Aizawa up and letting go. Several pieces were moved and relocated, nanotechnology creating more matter and metal pieces, forming a metallic fist with neon lines and which emits red electrical rays. 4 arms! Red Clock heard someone exclaim beside him, to which he sighed. He was hit in the face and sent rolling on the ground a few meters away from Aizawa. Looking up, he saw Ben's Tetraman form, who stood firm in his presence. Izuku just stood up properly and prepared to fight, being enveloped by a red light, turning into 4 arms. Ready, Tennyson? Izuku asked angrily. I was born prepared, Ben answers before going against Izuku. Both of them threw a punch that collided with its opposite. This only created a shockwave and Ben was thrown several meters back. Izuku just smiled as he begins to walk towards him, while cracking his knuckles. A green light was what was present in Ben's place after turning the dial of his Omnitrix. At that, Izuku raised an eyebrow at the blur of speed that headed towards him. Izuku managed to block Ben's slashes turned into XLR8 with his arms, before stepping back and being enveloped by a red light, also turning into XLR8. The differences in appearance were completely noticeable as in four arms. The first reason for the fact that each alien belonged to parallel universes, and the other noticeably different, was who was stronger and more powerful among them, applying not only the concept of different universes, different rules and therefore one version stronger than another, but also the improvements by nanomachines and above all, the updated alpha selection simulation. Now, including not only physical experience, but also the individual's own memory for combat and the correct and varied use of his skills. Izuku easily dodged each of Ben's attacks, before spinning around and slamming his tail into his feet, knocking him to the ground. At that, Izuku just stepped back and positioned himself in a combat stance, body slightly hunched, legs apart, left foot in front, right foot behind, left arm forward positioned as if to block an attack and right arm raised, with claws pointing forward. His visor lowered and a new and improved interface with them activated. By that moment, Ben had gotten up and looked at Izuku seriously. Damn, I didn't expect him to be faster than me. I couldn't react to his speed. But now is not the time to despair. I have to concentrate and think with a cool mind. Ben thought seriously to himself. He's thinking of a plan. I can't get too confident, and I have to defeat him quickly. Izuku thought to himself, moving forward, at the same time as Jen quickly turned the dial of the Omnitrix. Ben's place was replaced by Lotusstar. It is the same as his canon version of Omniverse, who had raised his arms and released a magnetic pulse. To his displeasure, negative XLR8 was not in his area of vision. Boom! He was sent flying through the air when a sonic boom appeared behind him. The cause? Izuku, who broke the sound barrier, moving a few centimeters behind Ben. And he moved again at high speeds before jumping and being enveloped by a red light, now transforming into a humongosaur. With the difference that now he has a shoulder pad on his right shoulder, and that he will run where the Omnitrix is located. It is made of metal with squares and neon lines as well as on the shoulder pad. With a hammer blow, he sent Ben crashing into a mountain. Still in the air, Izuku saw how several Kurogyri portals appeared and from them the UA students fell. It seems that he is desperate. Surely Idatenia has escaped and is heading to the UA, thought Izuku to himself. Shiny! He heard someone scream below him and approaching with explosions. Izuku just sighed in annoyance and let himself be hit by the explosions, not really feeling anything. Although that sent him back into the air, where Izuku landed on his feet and with one fist on the ground. He heard the unmistakable sound of fire after that, and looking up, he saw what looked like his sister shooting a flame at him. To which he just snorted annoyed, and was even more annoyed to hear the ground crack behind him and something sliding on the destroyed ground. At the same time, Chuko heard another shine. He had no choice but to transform again. Although he would not be seriously hurt, he preferred not to receive damage. Now becoming a ghost, which, unlike a long time ago, now wears a jacket with spikes on the shoulders. This jacket is black with white lines and red edges, red shoulder pads and a hood. Along with that, bracelets and a necklace where the Ultimatrix is, to control Alterra. He became intangible, allowing him to evade the 3 simultaneous attacks that had been launched at him. Rising from the disaster and destruction caused, he looked ahead, meeting Katsumi, Kane and a third person, whom he recognized as Shuka Todoroki. Wearing a white tuxedo-type suit, although half of his body was made of pure ice and his right eye was covered by a red LED visor. Ha ha ha, but she's the daughter of the second Flammatus, the daughter of the pathetic hero number 125 Salamander, and a bomb with legs, said Izuku with amusement and sadistic pleasure. Who would say that even with security protocols and equipment to have control, Terror would still influence him to a certain level. So this is the guy who defeated my father and left him in the hospital. Shoka thought to herself, clenching her fist and looking seriously at Izuku. I plan to defeat him and show that bastard what I'm capable of. Shoka finished thinking seriously. A pillar of fire was launched at him, while Kane released a powerful flame of fire, followed by explosions of Katsumi. Izuku just stood there and dropped his arms, while his only eye was open wide. They literally tried to hurt an intangible being, even though it already showed that their attacks didn't harm it? He just ended up shaking his head and walked away from the trio of heroic students. Where do you think you're going, you piece of shit? Katsumi shouted angrily, charging at him. But Izuku didn't respond and was enveloped by a red light, turning into a water hazard. I'll just make one thing clear to you, and that is dash. Izuku answers without finishing his sentence, while the Ultimatrix activates its super evolution function. His body mutated instantly, and in less than a second, he had become the ultimate water hazard. Now having, although based on the same figure, more marine green plates, on his arms the flexible black exoskeleton is combined with a spiral of translucent exoskeleton that shows water. His arms changed and the claws became sharper, but with a difference. His left arm is smaller than his right, having longer and sharper plates, keeping the spikes that were lengthened and sharpened, as well as his claws, which are now sharper and longer. A retractable and spiral-shaped screw-like cannon emerges in his palm. His right arm is more robust and larger, having heavy plates and barnacles on it, as well as an extra claw next to the thumb and his other 3 remaining claws joined together, forming a kind of crab claw. The plates on his back are larger and sharper. The crab-like limbs on his abdomen grew stronger and longer, now functioning as limbs as well as spider legs. His barnacles remained on his body, as did his shoulder pads, which grew larger, and eyes appeared on his body, abdomen, shoulders, legs, and forehead. The Ultimatrix is located in the stoma with 2 wires that separate and enter the back of the shell. Because I am supreme. Izuku finished speaking, his voice, heard in all the barnacles, eyes and visible water, resonating as if someone were speaking underwater and at high pressure. The 3 teenagers prepared themselves. Izuku could see everything in 368 degrees, not only seeing through his eyes, but also through his barnacles and water exposed by his translucent exoskeleton areas. That's one of those supreme forms, girls, be careful. Kane said seriously. Izuku just took a step towards her, scaring her and putting her in more than she already was. First test, heroism, said Izuku, confusing her. She fired a high-speed blast of water from her right arm towards Katsumi, who was unable to react. But she was saved at the last moment by Akane, who moved her from her spot thanks to the one for all that enhanced her speed. On the other hand, he raised his left arm, where the spiral-shaped trigger was deployed and adjusted, aimed at Shuka, which created a wall of ice. Pathetic, was the only thing Izuku said before firing a high-pressure water blast. It was, in simple words, like a water laser, being a straight line that cut through Shuka's ice like nothing and pierced her shoulder, causing a cry of pain from her. He watched as an annoyed Kane lunged at him with her fists wrapped in fire, and one for all lightning. Smash! Kane shouted, striking out, causing wind currents all around her. But when they heard even his bones breaking and the gust of wind shooting out, and not disturbing the other's vision, they saw how Izuku let himself be hit, showing that he had not received any damage and was standing as calm as he came. Sacrifice, but what reason? To protect a companion, to protect someone unknown, or just because you were angry? Izuku asked, confusing Kane even more. What do you mean? Kane asked, confused and scared to see how her attack did nothing. Nothing, just my schizophrenia, said Izuku before hitting Kane in the face with his left arm, leaving her unconscious. Damn you, Shining! Shouted Katsumi, launching herself at him with her explosions. Izuku just aimed at her with his right arm and fired a blast of ice that enveloped Katsumi in a solid ice cube, knocking her out. The last one, Shuka Todoroki, saw what happened, only getting angrier. She fired a colossal pillar of ice, which was received by Izuku with a punch. Crack! The colossal pillar that would reach 60 meters collapsed with a simple blow from Izuku, leaving a Shokesta Shuka in front of it. Nice try, but unfortunately for you, even titanium is nothing more than paper to me, Izuku reported, walking towards her. Shuka tried to attack again, but her body was frozen by a precise shot from Izuku's left arm with a flash of ice. He just approached her, bringing her face to face. Do me a favor, dear cutie. Tell your father that his dear and favorite friend Red Clock sends his regards. I turned into Izuku, causing the bicolor girl to growl angrily. Wretch, I will defeat you, Shuka said with great anger and fury. Ha 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 ha, try it if you want, as if I would care about breaking a girl's skull bones, Izuku said with simplicity and mockery, before returning to his human form and hitting Shuka in the face. He left her unconscious, although he made sure not to cause her any serious damage. Turning around, he began to walk forward, encountering something he didn't like. Tamura about to disintegrate the face of a girl with a frog quirk, Ben running in the distance with his Omnitrix in red, and Gwen even further away, trying to go there, while some villains stop her. Luckily for her, the frog girl was accompanied by a great head, but above all, the other Izuku. Without thinking, he gave Tamura an uppercut to the jaw, lifting her off the ground and causing a loud crack throughout the place. Ugh, that had to hurt, Izuku said, clapping. That only caused a ring bell sound. Damn bucking brat, thought Tamura with great pain. He tried to touch Izuku with all his fingers, almost strangling him, but was only a centimeter away. But at that very moment a green light followed by a pink flash appeared. A magic bullet crashed into Tamura's hand, shattering it and disintegrating it by magic energy. This was part of Gwen, whose eyes are black and the irises are a bright purple-pink. She is still far away, and after that shot she quickly and swiftly got rid of the other villains around her. On the other hand, Cannabolt! He exclaimed, charging at Tamura, taking his spherical form. He, what an idiot shit, I'll have to be his bucking doctor for sure, said Izuku after laughing before being enveloped by a red light. His body mutated, bumps appeared on his body and his skin turned white, while his body began to swell, before being enveloped by a red light. He turned into a Cannabolt, his plates a pale gold, fangs sticking out from his lips. He wears a black suit, with red edges. The Ultimatrix on his chest. She turned into a sphere and crashed into Ben, who was running over Tamura. She pushed him away from her, who continued on her trajectory and ended up crashing into the ground, rolling on it. Ben returned to his normal Cannabolt form and looked angrily at Izuku, who did the same as him, and both looked directly into each other's eyes, separated by a distance of 5 meters. You're starting to be a nuisance, Ben said angrily. I'm sorry, but this world is too small for 2 sumo punchers, Izuku said, clashing his fist and palm and looking defiantly at Ben, who growled angrily. That's mine, Ben dino, before turning into his sphere form and closing in on Izuku, whose Ultimatrix released a wave of power, activating its super evolution function. His body lengthened and grew, as well as certain areas became thinner, and a bulge appeared at the end of his lower back. It was enveloped by a powerful red light, now showing that Ultimate Cannabolt is larger and taller than its non-evolved counterpart, his entire body being now harder and more resistant, resembling metal, being mainly light silver and black, followed by bulges that are his plates of a darker metallic color. He now has a long and powerful tail. His 2 arms are longer and stronger, as well as his body is now thinner, making it flexible and agile. Along his body and around the plates, red neon lines are present. The Ultimatrix is located on his forehead. Held at the last second by his unevolved version, his grayish metal fingers began to melt and envelop Ben, before requesting and stopping his constant spinning, which made him retreat a meter, when he generated spikes on his feet that pinned him to the ground and used his tail as leverage. You should think twice before fighting me, Izuku said, pushing Ben. His fingers turned into chains that held Ben firmly, before he began to spin after wrapping his tail around himself and releasing Ben, sending him flying away from him. But not being satisfied with that, he turned into his mola form and began to spin at high speed. He headed to where he threw Ben, being aware that Kurogiri would take care of Tamura. Ag, that hurt, Ben said, undoing his ball form and lying on the ground, where he would voluntarily return to his human form. He heard something in the distance, how things were destroyed. He jumped when literally like a cannonball, Izuku went through a large 7-meter rock as if it were nothing and was rolling towards Ben. The dark grayish metal, turning out to be liquid metal, molded and formed spikes. Ben just reached out his hand as quickly as possible to the Omnitrix, being enveloped in a green light when he found the correct transformation. Automix! Ben said, transforming into said alien. It's the same as its canon omnivores form, just darken the Omnitrix dial and give it a light reflection instead of a shadow. I managed to correctly receive Ultimate Cannibal by holding it by 2 of its spikes, before raising my left arm, the neck shining in a beautiful emerald green. Atomic Punch! Ben pronounced, charging atomic energy in his fist before punching Izuku. A huge explosion of energy was generated, and Ben's light could be seen through the smoke. But what worried the aforementioned man was seeing a red light in the darkness of the smoke, followed by a flash that generated a current of air that dissipated the smoke. This was none other than the Ultimatrix Cannibolt, immune to radiation and with the ability to absorb energy. He took the energy from Ben's attack and converted it into power that he used to empower him and invest Automix, leading him to crash into a mountain. The liquid metal that makes up his plates became elastic and allowed him to bounce away from Ben, where he would return to his normal form and skid on the ground, digging his claws into it. Red electrical rays run through his body, although these are wasted, showing that he is unable to store so much energy or retain it for a defined time. He undid the spikes on his plates and returned to his sphere form. Now, his body was constricting at the sides and taking the shape of a wheel, in which he began to spin at high speed, skidding on the ground and accumulating kinetic energy to convert into power. When he accelerated forward, he created a shockwave that destroyed everything in the place where he was. Impact against a Ben Automix who was still recovering. The impact generated a large shock wave and even carried Ben and Izuku through the mountain where they were, reaching the other side of the mountain, where they both hit the ground, with Izuku landing and Ben hooked onto him, then releasing him and sending him flying, where he would fall to the ground returning to his human form. Damn, said Ben trying to get up, but he felt like his whole body hurt. Not because of the mere fact that he went through a mountain, but more because of the destructive impact that Izuku connected on him. He raised his left arm, seeing how the Omnitrix was red, to which he sighed in annoyance. Foreseeing that, Izuku simultaneously bounced off the ground and ended up returning to his normal form in the air and landing in front of Ben. Nice try, but even if Automix were to outclass Ultimate Cannibolt, he would only change to a form that would give me the advantage, Izuku said, approaching Ben, who covered his boot and nose. How about you walk away, Metahead? Your breath will smell like rust combined with sulfur? Ben said with disgust. Izuku blinked a few times before bringing his hand to his mouth and sighing into it before sniffing. At the villain's reaction, Ben just looked at him with a poker face. I don't smell rust and sulfur, it's hot metal shavings and lead, Izuku said with annoyance. Ha, repeat it until you believe it, Ben said sarcastically, to which Izuku sighed heavily, causing Ben to cover his mouth to keep from vomiting. Whatever you say, Tennyson, answers Izuku, rolling his eyes. Izuku saw how a tongue was shot towards Ben, so he did nothing and just allowed the frog girl to rescue him, taking him to Mineta and the other Izuku, where there was also a conscious but badly injured Aizawa. Red Clock just walked on all fours towards them, calm and slow. He looked at them with a smile. Well, this is interesting, some little kids acting like heroes. I wonder how long they'll last like that, Izuku said with amusement and mockery. I doubt it's anything bad, I don't think it's a big deal either, said Izuku Midoriya, narrowing his eyes. Ha 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 ha, don't think it's such a big deal, brat, Red Clock said, walking towards the group and approaching them. Don't even think about coming closer, Ben said as Tsuyu and Mineta backed away. He stood in front of Izuku, and the aforementioned two. Following that, a louder stomp was heard and Aizawa was seen with his eyes shining crimson. If you want to touch my children, you will have to walk over my dead body, Aizawa said seriously and coldly. As if they were going to demeter me, ha ha ha, said Ultimate Cannibolt, laughing. Whistle. What a lie, not even 10 minutes passed, said Red Clock angrily. Things that happen when you get distracted. Deco Izuku in amusement, watching as Ben pressed the dial of his watch. Humongousaur! Ben pronounced as he transformed into a Vaxasaur. He walked towards his enemy and connected with a master punch that sent him flying. But Izuku, not giving up, launched his liquid pair in the form of chains and caught the dinosaur alien. After that he landed on the ground where he stuck himself in and wrapped his tail around it, before starting to spin on his axis. The force of the ultimate cannonbolt and the strength of his spin were enough to pull and lift Ben and make him spin with him. With one tail he gave a destructive blow that allowed him to jump more than 30 meters upwards while taking Ben with him and entering his ball form, where he spun at high speed and caused a great dizziness in the Tennyson. From everyone's point of view, they could only see blurs of them too, before seeing how Red Clock threw Humongousaur against the ground, creating a large crater. The damage received caused Ben to return to his human form in pain. He saw how the ultimate cannonbolt descended with the trajectory of falling a few meters away from him. But at that very moment, a bubble of mana caught him and began to compress him. The cause was none other than Gwen, who raised her left hand and clenched her fist to crush Red Clock even harder. Her gaze only conveyed great anger at everything that had happened. For some reason he didn't understand, he was literally unable to see the villain's aura, as he was invisible to his astral vision. But he put that aside and just focused on knocking him out. "Noma, kill her!" shouted Tamura at the same time that Red Clock changed transformation, now turning into Diamond Head. Quickly creating a large cluster of crystals, she overcame the pressure of the sphere and freed herself to destroy it. Plenty of time to see how Gwen covered herself with a magic shield to avoid the Noma's blow. "Gwen! Create a force field that absorbs the impact of the blows!" Izuku shouted into the distance. "I had already thought of that," she exclaimed, finishing forming her magic shield, even adding spells to it. The Noma's impact was received by the shield, sending ripples through it like the waves in water when something hit or entered it. On the other hand, Red Clock threw several tiny crystals at his other self, which stuck to one side of the group where Izuku was, generating more crystals and completely enveloping them. Luckily, Izuku managed to save himself by jumping at the last moment. "Damn brat, I'll kill you!" said Tamura going against Izuku. But at the last moment her wrist was grabbed by Red Clock's hand, who just shook his head and pushed her back. "No murders, you stupid crazy girl," Red Clock said angrily. "And what tells you that the villains in this place will follow that order?" Tamura asked aesthetically and with hate. "And Adi, what makes you think that she has any chance with those UA brats? If they don't even know their weaknesses and you didn't plan how to separate them properly?" Red Clock counterattacked with simplicity and anger, leaving the light blue-haired girl silent. "I have to admit that did hurt," Ben said, approaching them without them noticing. "Shit," cursed Red Clock as he watched the alien teenager become enveloped in an emerald light. When she disappeared, it showed that Izuku had become his own version of Echo Echo, which multiplied before releasing a powerful sonic scream. At the same time, the Ultimatrix's super evolution function was activated. His entire body was enveloped by the rock, covering him completely as his clothes disappeared, before being completely enveloped by a red light. He took the full sonic attack, crossing his arms and not taking any damage. When he regained his composure, he showed himself to be made of stone with 6 protuberances on his back and stone spikes, pieces of stone forming a column from the back of his head to his lower back, possessing cracks all over the sides and black marks. With precise movements, he threw small red stones, which when they hit some unsuspecting Echo, they were wrapped in solid rock and thus preventing them from moving or escaping using their scream. Red Clock only saw that with indifference, barely listening to the complaints of the alien composed of sonic waves. He just turned around, while at the same time, parts of his body the rock was removed and showed a pale crystal, through which the light could be seen passing like a prism. This crystal took the form of spikes on his elbows, shoulders, chest, knees and feet, followed by his fingers, arms, legs, abdomen and forehead, where lines also became visible on his forearms and legs. His face and front of his neck and around the base of it are made of crystal. On his back 6 large sharp crystals emerged in pairs of 2, and crystals in the form of blades or spikes on the rock spine. He heard footsteps at his side. Without realizing it, he didn't notice that Izuku was getting close to him. He placed the tip of a rod on the glass of his left arm, which emitted a beep before vibrating at a high frequency. Crack! All the glass in his body cracked and shattered. He fell to his knees, but even that was separated from his body. The parts not joined by rock but by glass were separated from his body, losing his legs and fingers. I think I went a little overboard, Izuku whispered with a drop of sweat. You think? The idea was to act as the heroic weak boy, not the weak and intelligent, sociopathic boy who knows how to hurt others. Red Clock said in a sarcastic whisper. Ultimate Diamond had barely raised his right arm bound by stone plates, before hitting the ground with the last of his crystal in his hand. In this way, he managed to create a crystal pillar that hit Izuku in the chest, throwing him away from him. After that, his entire body became covered in rock again, and he joined the separated rock parts together, thus managing to get up and begin to regenerate under his rocky shell. Izuku! Ben! I heard someone exclaim as they approached him. Turning his gaze, he saw Gwen approaching at full speed towards where he was. Shit! Cursed Ultimate Diamond Head, crossing his arms in an X to take the hit. Boom! He was sent flying when a magical explosion took him away from the petrified Echo, and a badly wounded Izuku with broken ribs on the ground a few meters away. Gwen's eyes were covered by her hair and the shadow it made. With a few hand movements, she was enveloped in a pink aura and a clone of her appeared. Help them, take them to a safe area and come back to help the other clone with that chicken on steroids, said Gwen without any emotion, to which her Kron nodded. He began to walk towards Red Clock, who was getting up. He undid the rock that covered his body and showed that his crystals were healed and generated more in the missing places. Both hero and villain began to walk towards each other. Red and Pink exchanged glances, being less than a meter away. Gwen swung her fist forward, enveloped in a pure aura of magic, emitting a rainbow light. She slammed her fist into Ultimate Diamond Head's abdomen, who did nothing and just let himself be hit. The reaction to that was instantaneous, as the crystal alien's body emitted a blinding multicolored light all over the place. As the light dimmed, it showed how the Ultimate Diamond Head crystals shone in multiple colors. Sorry, Gwendolyn Tennyson, but for your information, I am supreme, Red Clock said before snapping his fingers. Instantly, Gwen was trapped in a flower-shaped cocoon by Red Clock, who began to walk to the side and away. Let me out, bastard, said Gwen angrily, trying to use her magic, but the crystals that enclose her absorb her magic, turning it into multicolored light. When you learn to control your emotions, that's when you'll be able to get out, Red Clock said simply, continuing on his way. I know I'm a hypocrite, but Gwen, I'm sorry, Red Clock thought to himself, continuing on his way. He came across a Tamura lying on the ground, being enveloped by Kurogiri's matter. What the hell is wrong with your O.F.? Tamura began to say, but his mouth was covered by Ultimate Diamond Head's hand and created a morsel. After that, he sighed and turned his gaze, seeing an explosion in the distance followed by dust and smoke. When it cleared, it showed Almight, with an expression of pure anger. Do not fear anymore, because I am already here, said the American hero, although his voice does not convey the happiness and spirit with which he usually speaks, but rather one of gloom and pure anger. Ultimate Diamond Head felt his gaze on him, as he pointed at Tamura. I wasn't the one who made the plan, she was. I just wanted ice cream and they got me into all this, Red Clock said simply and accusingly. A sonic boom was heard and like All Might he went against Red Clock. But at the last moment he would be intercepted by the Noma, who had defeated Gwen's copies. The punch that connected with All Might's jaw was heard throughout the place, and the hero himself crashed into the stairs at the entrance of the facilities. On the other hand, Red Clock just crossed his arms and stared at the view. That thing is going to lose, Red Clock said as if nothing was wrong. I hear Tamura's murmurs, to which I instantly knew what he was saying. Listening in the distance as All Might fought against the Noma. It's easy, even if you say that he is made to kill All Might, you only measure power by the feats, by what All Might has shown and what he did to All for One in the past. But you forget something and that is dash, Red Clock said, watching in the distance as All Might fought the Nomu, before connecting a powerful blow to the abdomen. Plus Ultra! All Might shouted while rays of one for all were present in the arm with which he hits the Nomu. The sound of the impact was heard for miles around, followed by the Nomu being shot upwards and destroying the ceiling, leaving behind an All Might with his arm raised in victory. That the will of those who are willing to give their lives for others or for the mere fact of achieving something that will define their lives is something that cannot be broken, that even gives them the strength to move forward and makes them even stronger with each passing second. Izuku finished saying calmly, while Tamura watched what All Might had achieved with his eyes wide open. Although he was confused to see how Red Clock entered his area of vision and walked towards All Might. What is that bastard doing? Didn't he see how the damn All Might defeated the Nomu made to kill him? At least he should use another transformation with which he already defeated him, and not that one of stone and glass that shines. Tamura thought desperately. I have to admit, that was great, said Red Clock, drawing the attention of everyone present and those watching him, some of whom were villains and all of the students. But you were missing something, and that something is me, said Red Clock, pointing with his thumbs to himself. At that, All Might clenched his fists tightly and began to walk towards Red Clock. The whole place fell into an eerie silence and a tension that was so thick it could be cut. Hero and villain stopped and went face to face. Maybe strength is not the strong point of this transformation, but its characteristics, abilities, and powers are, said Red Clock, looking up to look All Might in the eyes. I am able to break the crystal of the non-supreme form you have now. What makes you think that I will not be able to break the crystals of your Supremo form? Said All Might with anger and hatred. Because of my diamond-like purity, I am also bucking tougher, stronger, and more durable than the most important and valuable mineral in the universe. Red Clock responds before sliding his foot on the ground a little. I created a pillar that at a speed that All might not be able to react to, connected a blow to his wound, which knocked the hero down to the ground. Once on the ground and unconscious, his body began to emit smoke. Red Clock just sighed and wrapped him in a crystal cocoon. He wasn't so unfortunate as to allow them to see the hero's true appearance. Meanwhile, curse, curse, curse. Gwen cursed at not being able to free herself from the flower-shaped crystal cocoon that imprisoned her. She dropped to the glass floor, realizing she had no way to escape. Frustrated and worried about her best friend and cousin, she had no idea how to get out and go and help them, see how they were and be able to hug them. Shit, if only I had been faster and had taken your hand before being separated, but the fog Izuku, you wouldn't be hurt, Gwen said with small tears falling down her cheeks. Because of her clone that dissipated after being defeated by the Nomu, she knew the situation beforehand. Ben is fine as far as possible, waiting for the Omnitrix to charge. On the other hand, the clone took Izuku to an even safer place. He managed to get outside, where several patrols and ambulances were already approaching. Broken bones, damaged organs, he may not survive. Sorry, Gwen said, hugging her legs and burying her head in them. When you learn to control your emotions, that's when you'll be able to get out. She clenched her fists as the bastard's voice reached her mind. But even she knew he was right. Besides, it's something Izuku would do: calm down, see everything from a clearer point of view and focus on the goal. He got up from the ground while wiping away his tears. This thing absorbs my magic and transforms it into light or stores it to use it. It works like a capacitor in electronics. I just have to give it magic until it reaches its limit, gets damaged or breaks, which I hope is the latter, said Gwen, analyzing the crystal cocoon. After that she sighed deeply with her eyes closed and patted her cheeks, before clapping her hands together. She began to release mana. A pink aura enveloped her. This same aura was absorbed by her hair that shone more brightly with each passing second. On the other hand, Gwen's body was crumbling, the human skin showing in certain sands a confessed dark mana. Even some ketrans of her hair flickered in bright pale pink. Crack! The crystal began to crack and Gwen's mana spilled out from between the cracks. She opened her eyes, showing how they glowed in pure pink before releasing even more mana. What the hell was that? Red Clock asked in surprise, turning his gaze, seeing a large explosion of purple mana in the distance. It seems that his prisoner was released. Kurogyri said next to Ultimate Diamond Head, who sighed. It seems that he reached his limit of his human form and is in a pseudo-anodite form, or in his complete anodite form, thought Red Clock seriously. At that moment, a wall of the USJ would be torn down, showing Ida being accompanied by the UAA teachers as Red Clock sighed heavily. He collided his fists, and all the light and mana he had accumulated beforehand from Gwen was transferred to a plasma he created between his hands. After that, he raised his hand and the plasma began to rub, rising towards the ceiling of the USJ. Where once there it began to spin at high speeds and shine more intensely, before releasing a powerful light that blinded some and forced others to cover their eyes. That will give us time. I really want to go home and relax. Kurogyri, take everyone out of here. Red Clock ordered seriously. At the order, the shadow nodded and began to create portals that absorbed all of his companions, or at least the most important of them, obviously including Red Clock and Tamira. Not me, I still have things to do, said Red Clock calmly. Taking the order, Kurogyri made everyone present and himself disappear from the USJ facilities. Ultimate Diamond Head just walked calmly, watching as Ben had momentarily left Diego alone. So, hitting the ground, it generated colossal crystals that levitated on the ground and moved, surrounding and forming a limited area, before expanding and generating a dome. At the same time, the prism in the sky stopped shining before losing its white color and turning dark gray, now proceeding to disintegrate. You can open your eyes now, Red Clock said calmly. To which Ben would do just that, instantly realizing who was in front of him. And he instantly presses the dial on the Omnitrix, turning into a humongosaur. I think nuclear would have been better, or sonic, although I would have easily resisted these two, Red Clock said calmly. He saw the humongosaur's fist, and bringing his right hand forward, he received the prehistoric alien's fist with ease, surprising the bearer of the Omnitrix. I already said the strong point of this form is not strength, but that doesn't take away the fact that it isn't strong, said Red Clock before pointing his other hand at Ben's Omnitrix. Her crystal fingers reached out and quickly manipulated Ben's Omnitrix, causing him to revert back to his human form. How the hell did you do that? Ben asked incredulously, being pulled by Red Clock, who was holding his left wrist where the Omnitrix was. Unlike you, I know all the secrets of the Omnitrix. I know each of its functions, each component it has, etc. If I wanted, I could create the definitive Omnitrix, although this would take me a long time, said Red Clock, answering Ben's question that he tried to struggle with. Well, let's see, how about we make you swallow your own medicine, Ben said before reaching out to the Ultimatrix dial and taking it, before turning it and hitting it. Activating security system. Albedo's voice rang out and fired an electric shock that knocked Ben out, leaving him completely unconscious. Ultimate Diamond Head just snorted in annoyance, before taking the dial of the Omnitrix and turning its dial a few times, before pressing the center of the intergalactic peace symbol. Locks violated, initiating disabling of security and backup features. The voice of the Omnitrix resonated, as Red Clock returned to his human form wearing his futuristic armor. From the island, a device was deployed in his free hand. That was easy, Red Clock said simply, before the device in his hand scanned the Omnitrix completely. After that he let go of Ben and let him fall to the ground. At the same moment the glass began to break and shine. Gwen is really angry, said Red Clock before sighing and becoming Dark Master, before disappearing from the place. Chapter 23, Meeting the Children of the Orphanage. Narrator POV. This hurts, Izuku said with difficulty, watching as Recovery Girl placed bandages on him. Right now he was in the UA medical room, being treated by the heroine. I didn't expect to see you so soon again, said Recovery Girl, sighing heavily. I couldn't help it, the talk I had with you last night was quite entertaining. Izuku responds sarcastically, causing the heroine to shake her head and smile. It's better that you rest, the good thing is that there are few injured, said Recovery Girl calmly. Izuku nodded at that. How are the others? Izuku asked out of curiosity. Well, there are only a few injured that I have already treated, among them, your sister, Katsumi Bakugu, the daughter of the number 2 hero Shuka Todoroki, Benjamin Tennyson, who is with a few lessons and tired, like his first, Gwendolyn Tennyson, who is only exhausted and with parts of her skin missing. The good thing is that her quirk heals her. Some other students received injuries, but nothing more than a bruise. Recovery girl explained calmly, to which Izuku nodded. I understand, Izuku said calmly, settling himself on his stretcher. But at that very moment, the door to the room was opened, showing Gwen that she was 100% recovered. Oh boy, said Izuku, seeing a pink flash heading towards him. He whimpered in pain as Gwen hugged him tightly and began to sob into his shoulder. I thought I was going to lose you, Gwen said between sobs. Izuku sighed softly to calm himself before hugging her and caressing her back. There, everything is okay, nothing bad happened, Izuku said calmly and comfortingly to the girl who remained in her position. But at the same time, the door was kicked open, revealing Mei now and Momo, surprised by the pink-haired girl's action. She was now hugging the raven-haired boy with green highlights, who, just like with Gwen, also hugged and comforted her. Who would have thought? More than one person worrying about me, Izuku thought heavily. It's good to see you're okay, Midoriya-san, Momo said, approaching the group. Same here, Momo, it's good that the three of you are okay, said Izuku, nodding at her words. Your friend or acquaintance? I didn't really know, but it didn't matter. As long as it wasn't a bother, everything was fine. Scene change. We didn't know you were at UA as students, said All for One from a screen, to which Izuku sighed. I was never asked, Izuku answers, retracting his helmet. Damn bastard, Tamura said before jumping towards Izuku, grabbing her wrist with ease and squeezing it, causing the girl to moan in pain. Whatever, anyway. If what you think is that I am your second infiltrator, then get lost. I can help, but very little. I have to have a good image and without anything that harms it with the heroes, said Izuku coldly. I understand anyway, that's enough with Aoyama, explains All for One. I understand, so let's leave the subject behind for now. In the meantime, you Manola, I'll heal you, Izuku said before starting to walk and dragging a struggling Tamura. Let me go, you bastard! Tamura said, annoyed and hateful. As if it will affect me that they call me a bastard. Literally, my parents had me and my sister out of wedlock. In fact, the two of us are the reason why they got married, Izuku said somewhat thoughtfully, continuing on his way. Meanwhile, Tamura was just complaining and trying to get rid of Izuku. But it was all in vain, and in no time they arrived at the girl's room. Once there, Izuku opened the door, finding a messy and simple room, unpainted gray walls, a coat and a broken piece of furniture. At that sight, Izuku only sighed before approaching the bed and leaving the girl there. Get out of my room, you piece of shit, said Tamura with hatred. But she was taken by the hand and cornered on the bed, with an Izuku on top of her and looking at her calmly and with a mocking smile. Leave it alone, you fool, I only want to cure your idiocy, Izuku answers. From his forearm, a medical device similar to a trigger, with a small syringe appeared. Without Tamura being able to do anything about the force that Izuku was applying, he injected the contents of the device into the neck of the woman who complained of pain. It did not take long for it to take effect and show that it was a soothing and tissue regenerator. When Tamura saw in amazement how his lost hand was regenerated, bones, nerves, flesh, tissue, muscle, skin, nails, absolutely completely his hand had regenerated. The best thing was that he did not feel any pain, but a feeling of satisfaction and light pleasure. That's it, said Izuku before getting off of Tamura, who sat appropriately on her bed once Izuku left her. Why did you heal me? Tamura asked seriously. I don't like seeing others hurt, although to be honest, you deserved it. You tried to kill my other self and you're no saint. But I have no other choice. We're allies and the doctor's ways of healing are terrible. I hate the medicine of this planet, Izuku said calmly, turning around and seeing all the mess in the room. Don't expect a thank you, Tamura said angrily. I'm not interested, Izuku said before transforming into XLR8, except that he now wears a different suit with neon lines, now carrying blades with an energy edge, as well as his claws and wheels. Although the latter are similar to his ultimate form, they are only visually the same. And with great speed he had cleaned up all the mess in the room. What the hell are you doing? She exclaimed angrily, watching as Izuku organized everything and touched her things. I tidy up. Living in these conditions represents a danger to mental and physical health. Besides, I hate dirt and disorder in things that are so easy to clean, in places that have to be tidy. Izuku answers calmly. I didn't give you permission to do whatever you want, Tamura said angrily. But XLR8 just stroked her head, confusing her and missing her. I know, but I do what I want. Besides, I think this is just something that remains from my old self before accepting power. Whatever, I have things to do, Izuku said before becoming Dark Master and disappearing from the place. Tamura sighed in frustration as she looked at her entire room and how it had been completely tidied up, even seeing the TV and the video game console she lost months ago in the trash. After looking at her room for a few minutes, she turned to see where Izuku was, before she herself patted her head and groaned in annoyance. Idiot, said Tamura before turning around and falling onto his bed. Scene change. Repeat to me what I have to get, said Izuku wearing a robotic suit different from his villain's suit. Mostly materials. As I understand it, a Galvan of lower intellect is auctioning off Galvania technology and materials. Luckily for us, what he detects are the unpolished and unrefined materials that the Omnitrix are made of, which I have records of, Albedo explained in the mind of his bearer. Well, meanwhile, in the laboratory, take care of the Omni energy, although we would probably have to make a new laboratory, said Izuku, seeing a light at the end of the giant tube in which he walks. Your clone will take care of that. I'm sending you the materials that you have that I got, said Albedo before cutting communication with him. Well, this will be entertaining. Comes out of the tube. It's been a while, Lower Village, said Izuku, contemplating the village resembling an alien city below Mizurifu. Scene change. I think it's fine here, and Izuku said calmly, wearing loose black clothes and a simple loose black trench coat with a hood. After that, he looked up, seeing the starry sky. His visor disguised as a medical patch marked a red dot in the sky, which was where he wanted to go. Now that he thought about it, it was really practical to make clones of himself with Ditto. Currently there were 6, one in UA, another in Lower Town that was previously with the League of Villains, a third in the virtual simulator and 2 in the laboratory helping Albedo, and finally him, on the other side of the world. Yeah, everything is organized, as everything should be. On the other hand, his mission is to build the laboratory somewhere other than Earth. It's not for comfort or anything like that. He won't abandon the laboratory that All for One gave him, and where all his projects and work are. This laboratory would be more advanced and perfect, for riskier tests and more private inventions. Mostly using the stored designs and plans that the alternate universe malware has in its Ultimatrix and transmuter when the other Izuku obtains the materials, and they see what their atomic structure is like to transmute other materials into them. But for now, he will be in charge of building the new laboratory. Turning into malware, he deployed 2 jetpack wings on his back. Before taking flight and beginning to rise at increasing speeds, reaching ultrasonic speeds and beginning to be engulfed in fire, but his body was able to resist it, he ended up leaving the atmosphere of planet Earth in a short time. And it did not take more than 15 minutes to increase speed and take to the orbit of the planet that he would use to build his laboratory. I have to admit, Mars is beautiful, Izuku said, looking at the red planet before moving forward and entering its atmosphere. He was engulfed in fire again, but that didn't faze him, and he eventually made it to the surface of Mars and landed there. His robotic vision scanned the entire place, leaving nothing behind. Ice, iron oxide, fossils over 65 million years old. Yeah, nothing new. Maybe terraforming this place in the future wouldn't be a bad idea, Izuku said calmly, before pressing the dial on the Ultimatrix and being enveloped by a blue cap. Artificial body atmosphere, activated. Anti-threat force field, activated. Gravitational field, activated. After hearing that, Izuku returned to his human form, looking around him. What a peaceful place, he said with a smile before starting to walk. It felt special to be there. It was when he sat down on a rock and looked out at the landscape more, before looking up at the sky, seeing through his visor the outer space itself. Since he was a child, he always liked astronomy, physics and science, and secretly, science fiction. For him, the Ultimatrix was a miracle, and the fact that it turns him into aliens meant that he was not alone, but also, in Albedo's words, came from another universe, which also confirmed the multiverse. But with them there is also that emptiness. They were not alone, but that already made us special. It was a nightmare and a fear that he had when he was 11 years old. But as time went by, it disappeared. Now, he was able to travel through galaxies, know other planets, classify stars, see and contemplate them, learn about more living organisms, sapient or not. Inevitably a tear fell down his left cheek. Deku quickly laughed happily. Without a doubt he could not contain the emotion of seeing what he could do and what he had achieved. He gained knowledge, met alien life, and repaired the most powerful weapon in the universe, even across a few universes, among other things. But even he knows that he's falling behind and that he's not using his full potential, both his own potential when it comes to intelligence and learning, and that of the Ultimatrix and its alien forms. The first because he knows where it lives and that it doesn't require much power to destroy another rock in the galaxy, so he doesn't try his best, and second, because the Ultimatrix is still damaged and isn't made of the best materials, but even with that, he achieved great things and perfected and surpassed the first version that the original Albedo made of the Ultimatrix. With that he was proud. But he knew he was after the ultimate Ultimatrix that Albedo made, but he would achieve it. Now he only needed the power source and rebuild the entire base of the Ultimatrix system with a new and better material than the Omnitrix. With that, added to an improvement and perfection of the system and super evolution function and improvement in the supreme forms, with that he will get the ultimate Ultimatrix, the most powerful weapon in the universe. And once that is achieved, the research of the Hypermatrix or Hyper-Omnitrix would begin. Although it will take a long time before achieving it, but he already has some plans in mind and how to reduce the time to achieve it. He sighed and shook his head, realizing that he had strayed from his mission. Once his mind was clear again, he got up from the ground and transformed into a Ditto, which began to multiply in a mass, since the clones themselves also multiply. After a while, the number of more than 100 Dittos had formed, which were wrapped in red lights, except for a few groups of Ultimate Diamond Head, Armadillo with now integrated lights in the abdomen and shoulders. An ultimate water hazard appeared on the site. You know what to do, Armadillo of the terrain, Ultimate Diamond Head are in charge of the bases, and Ultimate Water Hazard of the transportation of the materials and their refining, also, of polishing and detailing everything, as well as the cleaning of any debris, said a Ditto to the other transformations who nodded, which began to work instantly. Scene change. Be careful, you damn brat! Shouted a guy who stuck his head out of the window of his car, while a boy literally jumped his car in front of it. Who was it? Of none other than Izuku, who was running at full speed, breathing heavily, dodging obstacles, going around them, even sliding under them if he could and or jumping over them. Feep feep feep. Damn it, Albedo, don't bother me, Izuku said, hitting the Ultimatrix, hearing a more constant and unbearable beeping that filled his patience. It's not my fault that you promised that blind woman that you would come today, said Albedo, only receiving a sigh from Izuku. I didn't expect my other self to break some of my ribs and knock me out, said Izuku, running at full speed, faster than a leopard. Whatever, at least I can see the results of the nanotechnology on you and the energy you created flowing through your body, said Albedo, amused in the boy's mind. Well, you're right, I don't feel tired or fatigued with everything that happened, Izuku said, jumping onto a wall and jumping on it, to avoid colliding with two guys who were carrying a large glass. Too bad the anodite is too much for you, said Albedo, which confused Izuku, who looked ahead, leaving aside what his partner said, seeing in the distance Gwen, who was in front of the orphanage and knocking on the door. Shit, Izuku thought seriously. He still remembered how Gwen had almost pinned him to the medical room when he wanted to leave. So as to not get reprimanded for seeing him run after the state he was in, he slowed down and made sure to run silently. Gwen, with her heightened senses and her sixth sense of mana detection, turned quickly, watching as Izuku approached her, walking calmly and calmly. Izuku, what are you doing here? Asked Gwen with a poker face. I'll get straight to the point, all this was my plan, and it's my obligation to be here, Izuku answers calmly, and standing next to Gwen, while he adjusts his clothes. Gwen just sighed heavily and grabbed his arm, applying a little pressure. You will go home now and without complaint, said Gwen angrily. Izuku just smiled sweetly at her with his eyes closed. Or what? You are wearing medical patches. Obviously this pretty lady would have to be escorted by me to her bedroom. Izuku asked innocently and elegantly, while he smiles warmly at Gwen and opens his eyes. The result was instantaneous as Gwen blushed furiously and let go of him, covering her face in embarrassment. Idiot! How can you say something like that in public? She exclaimed, blushing from her cheeks to her ears and embarrassed, while covering her face, only hearing a small giggle from Izuku. Chirp. Izuku turned to see the door opening, revealing Isabella, Gwen, who also heard her put a spell on herself to simulate her embarrassment and big blush. Excuse me, what can I help you with? Isabella asked, not knowing who they were, Izuku and Gwen, because of her blindness. It's us, both teenagers said in unison. Ho, welcome. No, I was hoping you would come, Isabella greeted, although she said the last part in an inaudible whisper that neither of them heard. Yes, we are sorry for the delay. Some problems arose along the way, Gwen apologized with a smile. She frowned in irritation as Izuku made quotation marks with his fingers. No problem, I think you're on time. Come in, Isabella said calmly before stepping aside, allowing the two teenagers to enter. And I don't really know what the job of an orphanage caretaker is like. Where should we start? Izuku admitted and at the same time asked, looking at the woman who raised an eyebrow, before elegantly covering her mouth and laughing silently. First you have to meet the children you will be taking care of, Isabella said calmly, motioning to the teenagers before starting to walk. Izuku and Gwen followed her. It didn't take long for them to reach another door. According to Izuku's visor, it was a living room where he saw the children from the first time he was here. Wait a moment, when I tell you, come in, Isabella said before entering the room and closing the door behind her. What are you thinking about? Asked Gwen after a while of silence, and seeing her friend thoughtful. Not much, just silly things, Izuku answers, shaking his head. You may come in. They both listened to what they would open the door before going inside, meeting Isabella, who had 4 children in front of her, 2 girls and 2 boys. Let me introduce you, this is Natsuki Subaru, whom you already know, said Isabel with a smile and a vein of anger in her head, making a small sign to the boy who stole from Izuku more than once. Dark brown hair and silver eyes, 11 years old, wearing a black shirt, black jacket, a red scarf and dark brown pants with black boots. Izuku raised an eyebrow at the outfit. An attempt to look badass? Buck you emo broccoli, Subaru said angrily. At that Gwen had a drop of sweat, although Izuku laughed amused, missing the others. Hello little one, greeted Gwen with a bright smile, embarrassing Subaru. Hi, my name is Midori. The second boy, the one with the plant control quirk, introduced himself, wearing an orange scarf, a dark blue coat, black pants with green lines, and white tennis shoes. His hair is green and his eyes are the same color but a darker shade, being 10 years old. Hi little one, I see you like to read, said Izuku, to which the boy nodded shyly. That's right, although this book only has my recipes for plants written down, said the boy, to which Izuku nodded, interested in that internally. Hello? My name is Ko. It's a pleasure to meet you both, said a girl with sea green hair and blue eyes, wearing black and white clothes. Izuku gulped, recognizing her as the girl with the electricity and plasma manipulation quirk, recognizing her as the most dangerous one in the place right now, not counting Gwen or himself. Hey little one, are you by any chance a fan of a certain Mika? Izuku asked with a small smile. How did you know? Wait, do you know her? You are the first person I know who knows about Miku. After all, she is more than 900 years ago, from the era before quirks, the girl exclaimed with enthusiasm and joy. I know a few things about that era, Izuku replied in a funny way, although he was embarrassed when he heard Gwen giggle. And she is Yukiko. Isabella introduces the last girl while stroking her head and waving her hand, a girl with black hair and purple eyes, about 9 years old. The girl waved while smiling at both teenagers. Is she shy? Gwen asked, tilting her head slightly. Although the girl greeted her kindly and with a smile, she was perhaps shy when it came to speaking. No, unfortunately, Yukiko was born deaf and mute, Isabella answers with pity. Izuku saw her. He knew that she is the girl with the sonic quirk of hearing and voice, capable of controlling minds and making destructive sound attacks. They would be almost or equally powerful as Ultimate Echoes when she was an adult. Although he would have to be careful with her, what did he have to worry about? She literally has a blessing linked to a curse. Now that I thought about it, that's what Quirkless was born for instead of the state he's in. Hello, little one. Izuku greeted with a smile and in sign language, surprising those present. Hello, sir. I didn't expect you to speak sign language. It's nice to meet someone else who speaks it. The girl replied in the same way as him, provoking laughter from Gwen and nervousness from Isabella. Yes, weird, but someone has to be prepared for anything besides I'm 15 years old. I'm not old enough to be a gentleman. Izuku answers with a small smile and winking. Ha, I understand. Yukiko answers with a smile, to which Izuku shook his head with a smile and a small laugh calming the atmosphere. Why did that woman get scared when the girl called him sir? It's not like she has a problem with that, it's an apparently educated girl who told her that, and not an idiot of her same age. Well, with everyone introduced, I think you can start your work now. I will assign you some tasks, said Isabella, to which both teenagers nodded. Chapter 24, Knights and Parasites. Narrator POV. A whole week without classes, why am I not surprised? Said Izuku sarcastically, rolling his eyes. He was in his room, calm, being the UA clone and the one who had to keep the social life of the clone team and now Red Clock under control, when he received a message from Izuku with the League of Villains saying that he had finished and was returning to the laboratory to help. At least meeting those children today comforted him a little. Now that he realized it, it was somewhat immoral how he and the clones worked. Once converted into Ditto and after cloning themselves, each copy could feel the pain of the other copy, although with training they could divide the pain that the others felt. But once each copy was converted into another form, this link was cut by the Ultimatrix, which synchronized with the other Ultimatrix, causing a kind of hive mind on Albedo's part, and in which all the I merge so that there is only one. Meanwhile, he being Izuku, the term or concept of original Ditto or original Izuku was eliminated and everyone became their respective originals. What is the case is that if almost everyone dies, at least with one Izuku still alive, he could continue with his life. With Albedo in charge of storing the memories of the deceased and transferring them to the surviving Izuku, we eliminate the last seconds of life, and only copy the important information from that. Something unethical, but he really didn't care. After all, he lived and the others, once dead, were disintegrated along with their respective Ultimatrixes, by the security system it has. It wasn't as if souls existed and those other selves were going somewhere. He sighed in frustration and boredom when he realized that he would not get anywhere thinking about it, and that he had nothing to do. He rolled around in his bed before looking upside down at the window, managing to visualize how a hero flew through some buildings. He snorted. He didn't feel like hunting heroes that night either. Vigilantes? Neither, or at least not the ones that cause trouble, or usually attack him first. It had been a while since he thought about them and put them aside, as long as they didn't attack him. Real villains? He thought about it for a few moments. He liked the idea. Besides, they were the perfect punching bags for him along with the fake heroes. But I didn't feel like doing it either. Well, I'm going to take a walk and let the Celestial Sapiens one happen, said Izuku, jumping out of his bed and heading to his work table, where he took paper and pencil. He wrote a note to his sister, who he expected would come to pick him up for the dinner she was making. It's not that he disliked her food, in fact, it was nice and he liked it to a certain degree, although there were aspects that needed improvement. He snorted, annoyed, realizing now how over the years his senses had become more acute with each transformation, an improvement in him, both sensorially, physically, and even mentally. But they were so simple and tiny that he had only just begun to notice this year. He shook his head to not get distracted and left the note on his bed before heading to his closet, where he would take out some clothes to change into. Now wearing his black and white sneakers, dark blue jeans, followed by a black shirt with a stripe on the chest that extends to his shoulders around the neck, with the number 01 on the chest in white. And finally, his fusion between a jacket and a hooded sweatshirt, white with red edges, including the number 01 on the right chest. After he was already dressed, he proceeded to climb out of his bedroom window. He jumped between the roofed chest and the wall of the alley next to it, before landing on the ground in a businesslike manner. Once there, he began to walk at a leisurely pace, while putting his hands in the pockets of his jacket/sweatshirt. "I have to admit it's a quiet night," Izuku said as he walked while looking at the night sky. But at that very moment, he heard a trash can fall to the ground. Turning his gaze to the sound, he found some yellow aliens, black hands and feet, and a head similar to that of an octopus with tentacles reaching to the abdomen, under the skin and being exposed, also exposing the brain, accompanied by a single green eye with a red pupil. "You guys, I know them. What are your names?" "I remember now, Xenocidas, dirty parasites, although I think they are known urbanly as Nalians because of the aliens that have dealt with you when you take control of a host," Izuku said calmly, beginning to walk towards them. The Nalians looked at him aggressively, before taking aggressive poses. "If my memory serves me right, you are parasites commanded by the Highbreed. What did those incestuous idiots want with the Earth? I don't think they have reached the generation where everyone is infertile due to a mutation from so much incestuous crossing, and that now they want to destroy life in the galaxy," Izuku said thoughtfully, talking to himself. The Nalians stood still in their place, watching as the boy in front of them began to mumble things they didn't understand. The three of them even had a drop of sweat, anime style. "But anyway, let's get this over with quickly," Izuku said before being enveloped by a red light. "Swamp fire!" Izuku said, turning into a Methanosian. His hands were engulfed in fire, and as he prepared to attack the Nalians, he heard metallic footsteps approaching at high speed. Looking behind the Nalians, Izuku saw with a raised eyebrow a large group of knights, each wearing identical armor and carrying swords. "Now what did I miss?" Izuku asked, confused and surprised. The Nalians just shrugged at Izuku's question, who snorted angrily. "Damn Xenos, in the name of Dash," said the knight who seemed to lead the group, but a fireball that hit his face knocked him to the ground out of the battle. "Less talk and more action," said Izuku with his hands wrapped in fire and smiling. The knights charged against the aliens, the Nalians stayed together and in defense. On the other hand, Izuku only brought his hand behind his back and all some seeds in his hands, which he wrapped in fire before throwing them. The instant he touched a surface, they embedded themselves in it, and flaming roots emerged that held the knights and Nalians, who screamed in pain. Izuku ignored that and just walked away from them, lighting his hands on fire and shooting the fire in the form of a ball to the ground, beginning to burn it. He did the same on the other side, sealing the alley with walls of fire. After that he jumped onto the wall and started doing parkour until he reached the roof next to a water tank, where he left 3 plant seeds. From them emerged 3 carnivorous plants, 2 of brown and arid tones, while the other of bright and nourished green tones, with the inside of the jaw colored blue. "You will be in charge of detecting the temperature, analyzing it, and ensuring that they don't die, and you too will be in charge of listening to it and throwing enough water," Izuku ordered the 3 plants that nodded at his orders. With that said, Izuku walked to the edge where he dropped down, landing on the sidewalk and returning to his human form. "I have to investigate this, maybe in the future it will also cause me problems," said Izuku, sighing with annoyance. Scene change. "How about this?" said Ben, holding an alien weapon in his hands. "That will work," Gwen said confidently, taking the weapon from Ben. She wrapped the alien weapon in mana, then released it, and it began to spin at high speed. "What are you doing?" Ben asked, raising an eyebrow. "I just traced the location of the gun's owner, although unfortunately there is a drawback," Gwen said, watching as the gun stopped and pointed in a direction. "And that inconvenience is?" Ben asked seriously. "That only guides me to the current owner. The former owner I am only able to track once the current one is defeated and he is confirmed to more than one person that said object no longer belongs to him," Gwen said seriously. "Then we will go to the base of these subjects as soon as possible. The inhabitants of the Earth are not authorized nor indoctrinated for the use of these weapons. asked an alien plumber who accompanied the two teenagers. That's right, Magistrate Labrid. In fact, I already have the location, Gwen said with a smile, then took the gun that was pointing in a specific direction. So let's go, said Ben, turning the dial of his Omnitrix and pressing the core, turning into XLR8. I'm on it, Gwen said before creating a mana plate and standing on it, followed by Magistrate Labrid. Walk, Ben said before lowering his visor and beginning to cut, becoming nothing more than a blur with a trail of black, blue, and green. Don't worry, idiot! Gwen shouted angrily, beginning to move forward and gaining increasing speed. It seems that he has a great affection for his grandfather, Labrid said when he saw the attitude of his younger companion. That's right. Sighs. We both love our grandfather. You could say he's our second father figure. Besides, we're still scared and worried about his spontaneous disappearance, said Gwen seriously. She wrapped her and Magistrate Labrid in mana to protect themselves from the wind, and then increased her speed even more. You have nothing to worry about. I know Magistrate Max. He is fine wherever he is, Magistrate Labrid said confidently. I hope so, Gwen said with a sigh. Scene change. I challenge you to a Pokemon crossbow, said one of the Eternal Knights who keep watch at the entrance to his base. No, later when we switch with the other two, said the second knight, sighing. Come on, what bad thing could happen? After all, it's not like anything is going to happen on this boring night, asked the first guard, walking a little ahead and crossing his arms. At that moment they heard footsteps at great speed, and by the time they tried to react, the first knight was taken to the ground and bitten by a large albino dog, fangs protruding from between its black lips, one eye, with a long tail and white patches on its neck, with the symbol of the Ultimatrix on its right shoulder. Izuku shook the knight in his jaws before throwing him against a pillar, knocking him unconscious. After that he set his sights on the other knight, who held a firm grip on an alien weapon. He didn't care about that, and just dodged laser shots, until he got close to the knight and knocked him to the ground, hitting his arm with one of his front paws to make him drop the weapon, sending it sliding across the ground. After that he proceeded to model wildly, taking care not to damage him mortally, just enough to knock him out. Once that was done, he stood up from it and started walking towards the weapon he had thrown aside. Getting close enough, he started sniffing it, detecting the scent of the aliens on it. So he turned around and saw the door, from where he could smell even more of that scent, to which he ran before charging at it, knocking it to the ground and allowing the beast to pass freely. I detect more knights carrying firearms. I detect how one placed himself in front with a sword and gave the order to attack. He alone moved and dodged their lasers' attacks. Dodging, he charged at them, knocking them down one by one, grabbing some and throwing them at his companions. He also fired his spikes and seriously wounded others. He now found himself face to face with a group of knights who raised their weapons towards him. But at that moment 2 mana attacks were launched towards them, enveloping them and trapping them in pink mana domes. Demons. I think frustrated Izuku to be closed. Red Clock, I didn't expect to see you here, Ben said, approaching the mana dome. Izuku just growled at him angrily. So this is the wanted criminal. An arrest warrant was issued, and besides, he's someone who has a price on his head on the black market, said Magistrate Labrid seriously. Do you think he's related to the arms sale? Asked Gwen, crossing her arms and standing in front of Izuku. That did offend him, and he showed it when he growled at her and turned his body so he wouldn't see her. Surely, Earth only has level 2 technology, and these weapons are level 5, something that only he can easily obtain, said Magistrate Labrid. Plum! A wall was torn down at the appearance of a dragon, which roared at the intruders of its territory. Damn! Gwen said, annoyed, creating a magic barrier. But the dragon that was charging knocked her down and continued forward. Unfortunately, the one who followed was Izuku, who only made a snort in the form of a growl, before bringing his left paw to his shoulder where the Ultimatrix is. He turned his dial, activating the super evolution function, being enveloped by a wave of red power. His body mutated and began to grow larger, with his fur turning reddish, with 2 protuberances growing on his back, as well as one next to his tail and neck, before being enveloped by a red light. The glass dome was shattered and disappeared under the dragon's stomp with its front paw/arm, but was easily stopped. Seeing better who it was about Ultimate Wildmutt, which is much bigger and robust than its non-evolved counterpart. Its fur is now red, with bigger and sharper claws. It now has 2 tails that end in a cluster of bone spines. It has 2 wings similar to bat wings but with hands in the last joint. Apart from the wings and the 2 tails things that stick out, it also includes the 2 heads with bone above and jaws that remind us of leeches, having long and pointed tongues. From the head where an exposed skull is, stopping its next to the lower back and starting from the tail, a bone armor can be seen, being plate above another plate, as well as in the front legs, which are now more armed with thumbs, having 3 bone plates each, with each plate larger than the other and each having 3 points. Their whites were enhanced and made larger, being on each neck of each head, on the chest, on the back, and between the bone plates of the front arms/legs. Supreme Beast leapt and dodged the dragon with great speed and agility, before quickly charging at it, stabbing its claws through its scales, causing it to roar in anger and pain. Once on its back, the head on the left began to release a thick yellowish-green gas. As the dragon tried to get it off its back, Izuku only spread the gas further around the dragon, and when he saw the right moment, the head on the right closed its jaws, generating sparks. Boom! Greya! The dragon roared from the great pain he felt from the explosion of that gas, followed by the residual fire. I end up falling exhausted to the ground, with Izuku jumping out of the smoke and falling to the ground perfectly, landing perfectly. I recommend you stay still, Ben said seriously, bringing his hand to the Omnitrix. Or please, at least I expected a thank you for defeating the dragon, said Izuku's left head. I doubt you'll be able to do anything to me, Tennyson, said Izuku's right head. It was evident that, although both heads were the same entity, there were attitudes and a slight change in personality in each one. You want us to trust you, after everything you did? Gwen asked angrily, getting dangerously close to Izuku. Are you like this because of what I did to your boyfriend? The head on the right asked mockingly, receiving a headbutt from the left. He's not my non-boyfriend, but you dared to hurt him, and that's enough for me. Gwen responds angrily and with a blush on her cheeks, raising her fist that was wrapped in pink mana that turned into fire. I recommend you not to do that. I am immune to fire and resistant to high temperatures, as well as explosions. If not, look at what I did behind me, said the head on the left calmly. Click. Everyone turned to see what was causing that sound, watching as one of the Eternal Knights tried to assassinate Magistrate Labrid from behind with her weapon, which failed and was broken, and began to release red electricity. Damn, quick, get away, said Magistrate Labrid, moving away from the knight, who died from the large amount of energy that hit his body. But unfortunately it did not stop generating and the weapon was about to explode, generating a large explosion. Izuku did not need to know what would happen, so he quickly ran towards the Magistrate Labrid, and with his right wing/hand he took Gwen. The two were the closest to the explosion, while on Ben's side, he did not have to worry, the Omnitrix had a lifeline. Boom! The explosion was large enough to wipe out anything within 30 meters. Ultimate Wildmutt was sent flying and rolling on the ground, curling into a ball with his tails and wings. He dug his claws into the ground and spread his wings, revealing Gwen and Magistrate Labrid, with Tennyson coughing from the smoke of the explosion. Are you okay? The Izuku head asked with concern, and then Ultimate Wildmutt came out from on top of them. Gwen! Magistrate Labrid! Ben shouted, followed by a green light as he ran towards them. Are you okay? Ben asked once at his side. No blood, no wounds was what the right head of Ultimate Wildmutt said without any concern, before turning around and analyzing his surroundings. We're fine, said Magistrate Labrid, rising from the ground and then looking at Izuku. Why did you save us? He asked seriously. I'll be a bastard, a monster, a villain, a son of a dash, said the right head, but received a headbutt from the left head. The fact is, if I have a chance to stop someone from getting hurt, I'll use it, as well as help, said the head on the left with understanding and calm. Ha, do you think she believes that? You almost killed someone, said Gwen angrily, her eyes glowing neon pink. How important is Izuku Midoriya to you? Asked the head on the left tilted. Enough to break your spine and leave you crippled for life, as well as making sure you rot in prison," said Gwen with hatred, her hand wrapping in mana. But there was no response. Even the head on the right didn't say anything and just turned away. The one on the left seemed uncomfortable by what they noticed. "It seems to be true. The Anodites are the most passionate race and with the ability to form a bond with others in an almost unbreakable way. By the way, you forgot my advice: control your emotions," said the head on the left before releasing a black gas, followed by the right that released a blood-red gas. The last thing they saw of him was his fur lying down completely before becoming completely invisible. "Hallucinogenic components have been detected," Ben's Omnitrix warned, and he snorted in annoyance before pressing the dial and transforming into 4 arms. He then proceeded to clap his hands, dissipating both gases. "Damn," Gwen said angrily as she looked to see how the villain had escaped. "Well, what can we do? For now, we have to investigate this and find Grandpa." "I'm sorry, Gwen, but I promise we'll catch him at some point," Ben said to his cousin, who sighed in frustration. "I hope so. I'm not going to let him get away with almost killing Izuku," Gwen said angrily. "But he's right. You have to learn to control your emotions. Any loss of control, even the smallest one, can be the last thing you feel," said Magistrate Labrid seriously. "I understand. I'll keep that in mind," Gwen said, nodding in agreement. "Well then, let's go. There are some unconscious knights over there. Let's just hope they wake up so we can get information, and you can use your spell again when one of them gives up his weapon," Ben said as he walked towards a group of unconscious Eternal Knights. "Humph, that's a stupid idea," said Gwen, trying to put what had happened behind her and going to her cousin. Both were followed by Magistrate Labrid. And without anyone noticing, being observed by Izuku, who, being invisible, proceeded to withdraw from the place, using his wings to fly and move away quickly. Capitulo 25, Highbreed. Well, with this I only have 15 parts left to upload shit. Narrator POV. It has to be around here. Izuku thought, landing and becoming visible, still showing that he was transformed into the ultimate wildbutt. To then return to his human form, wearing a black shirt with red lines, the one from Albedo Omniverse, along with dark blue jeans, along with black and white boots. Above, a red trench coat with black lines and the number 01 on the right side of the chest. On the hands, fingerless gloves with the symbol of the Ultimatrix, which is in its compact form. He walked forward as he pulled out a white mask from his trench coat, which he put on, his right eye shining and being visible between the eyes of the mask, while a red pulse was emitted by the mask and Izuku's hair was dyed snow white. He started walking, seeing a person outside a gas station carrying a hunting rifle. "You shouldn't be here," the man said, looking at Izuku. "Do I seem to care?" Izuku asked with a distorted voice. The man just snorted and raised his rifle, aiming it at Izuku's head. Izuku watched as he fired before tilting his head and avoiding the energy base, before quickly moving forward and punching the man in the stomach, following up with an uppercut and grabbing his head, before kneeing him in the forehead. Crack! A mask the man was wearing broke, now revealing a Denalian who fell unconscious to the ground. "Easy," Izuku said simply, before starting to walk inside the gas station. Once inside, he explored it a bit, until he found an elevator with a control/panel with 2 buttons next to it. What will it be? Izuku thought sarcastically, taking control and looking at the green and red buttons. He just sighed and pressed the green button before getting into the elevator, which began to descend. As he descended, he raised an eyebrow under his mask, seeing how underground there was already a giant machine. According to his sensors on his mask, they indicated that it was a ship with gravity thrusters and a laser proton weapon at its landing base. Meanwhile, several Denalians worked around him, transporting weapons, materials, among other things. "How nice," was the only thing Izuku said, before being enveloped by a red light. The Denalians turned to listen as the elevator went down completely, then opened and showed Malware with his arms turned into a blaster. "Greetings, space parasites," Izuku said before the orange/yellow energy of the blasters turned and began to fire like a machine gun. "I shoot at all the Denalians who were knocked to the ground, knocked out by the impact of the corrupted Mechamorpha's plasma bullets." He walked forward, finding the door, but saw a Dnalian touch a panel and the door was closed. Really? How stupid, Izuku said before approaching the door, while his right blaster arm changed shape and took the form of a sword with a blade the same color as the hole in his chest. With swift movements, only being a barely visible blur, he cut through the door, then turned his left arm into a giant spiked robotic arm and punched the door, knocking it down. Then he entered the ship and began to walk, passing by one side of the Dnalian, completely ignoring it. He continued walking to find more Dnalians approaching him and carrying laser weapons. Izuku only changed forms again, becoming XLR8. To disappear in a burst of speed, and all the Dnalians were lying on the ground unconscious. After that, he turned his gaze seeing how more Dnalians arrived where he was. I hope the others are doing well with the update for the Ultimate Ultimatrix and the DNA alternator, that way he could deal better with these things. Unfortunately at the moment there is no cure, and from what my scanners tell me, the parasite already has complete control. Izuku thought seriously. Scene change. I told you to hurry up, Gwen said, descending with Ben and Magistrate Labrid on a mana platform along the elevator path. I didn't know it would take us much longer to convince those knights to give up their weapons, Ben said with a sigh. It seems that someone has already been here, said Magistrate Labrid, seeing the unconscious Dnalians on the ground. Yes, and something tells me we already know who it is, Ben said, getting off the mana platform and starting to walk. Red Clock, said Gwen seriously. That seems to be the case. He was somehow related to the Eternal Knights and the Dnalians, said Magistrate Labrid. Do you think our grandfather is here? Asked Ben, seeing the mess, heading to the entrance of the ship. Magistrate Max said he would be investigating the arrival of the Dnalians to the planet, but unfortunately we lost communication with him. Perhaps this is some point in his investigation, said Magistrate Labrid seriously, while he and the Tennyson cousins entered the ship. Let's hope we find something here, or at least stop whatever they're planning, Ben said seriously. But at that moment, a wall would be shattered, as a blue figure crashed into a wall. Damn space Nazi! Four Arms complained negatively as he returned to his human form. You're, Gwen said, but was completely ignored. And then they say that humans are shit, and these are bucking saints, bucking xenophobes, bucking racists and narcissistic stupid people, bucking incestuous stupid people, bucking retarded, badly born abortions of monkeys. But who am I to say that? The Galactic Alliance prefers them over bucking humans. What the buck is that? Bucking dolphins are worse than us. Those drug addicts addicted to puffer fish, rapists and sadistic murderers of garbage, ag, said Red Clock angrily. You stopped screaming, you bucking filthy animal, said a voice, drawing everyone's attention. Peeking through the shattered wall, a white alien appeared, with black spikes in hands, several divisions on its torso, with what resembles red eyes on its chest and a head with spikes on the sides, whose face is purple with several eyes. Don't talk to me with that incestuous genetics, you piece of idiot. At least my species can reproduce, said Izuku angrily and pointing at him threateningly. Ag, I'll kill you, insignificant being, said the Highbreed, running towards Izuku. Ben, Gwen said with a sigh, clapping her hands together and creating a magic circle. I'm on it, said Ben, activating the Omnitrix before pressing the core, transforming into Humongosaur. He went against the two guys who were about to fight. But the Highbreed noticed him, only making him more angry, so he changed his target and intercepted Ben. There was a small struggle, but the invading alien was stronger and lifted Ben up before throwing him against the wall. On the other hand, a red light caught his attention. Turning his gaze, he received a punch in the face. Try harder, Tennyson, said Izuku, turned into a Humongurio. Redesign, why? A Celestial Sapiens did it, v. But leaving the jokes aside, and before someone says it's an alpha form, just change the design to be different from Ben's. After all, I already made it clear that Izuku has aliens from another universe, that is, and that these base ones are stronger than those of Ben and Ben 10 canon. And I mean universe, not alternative line, since a universe in Ben 10 is a multiverse. But I literally mean another universe. Also, the Alpha is only a power-up using the specimen that fought against his entire race without evolving, becoming stronger after each battle and training, apart from gaining experience that is transferred to the mind of whoever transforms into him, and it is something permanent, and no matter what. Izuku always transforms into the aliens with alpha status. Damn lower evolved monkey! The Highbreed shouted with hatred. That I couldn't refute it. Literally, even humans still have the monkey tail on their spine, apart from very bad things in the body, missing bones, extra bones, missing tendons, and these degrade, useless organs, etc. Izuku said somewhat thoughtfully, but raised his right arm to see how the invading alien was going against him. The plate with 3 rectangular pieces that he had on his right arm projected a red force shield, stopping the Highbreed's advance. Although we are not inferior, unlike other living beings, you know what, forget it, this is not the time to brag about who is superior to whom, Izuku said, sighing before pushing the Highbreed. He undid his shield before hitting the enemy alien in the face, then holding him and throwing him. Tennyson thinks fast, Izuku exclaimed, launching the Highbreed against Ben, who reluctantly nodded before beginning to grow. Don't we have to do something? Asked Magistrate Labrid to Gwen. Nah, he's got it under control, Gwen said, seeing what was happening. Meanwhile, Ben grew to 10 meters, before hitting the Highbreed and launching it towards Izuku, who smiled. He grew 2 more meters, reaching 5, and giving an upward blow he launched the Highbreed upwards. Then it began to grow to the point that it was able to hold the invading alien before it crashed into the ceiling and threw it hard against the ground, creating a large crater. After doing that, Izuku returned to his human form. Piece of cake, said Izuku, reflecting his hands and with a happy tone. I turned to see a flash of light and see Ben walking towards him with a serious look, while he brings his hand to the Omnitrix. I don't want to fight, Tennyson, said Izuku, levitating his hands in surrender. Give me a reason not to start a fight with you, said Ben seriously. I have information about these guys. They are Highbreed, or that's what they are called now. Their old name is not worth it. In short and generalizing, racists, narcissists, and xenophobes. They believe in the supremacy of their species and that every living being apart from them is inferior. They came to planet Earth to destroy it, and I hope they don't have life scanners, or else they would be bothering me somewhere else. Sighs. What a shitty night, I would have stayed home. Izuku answers, now looking at the ground thoughtfully. What else? Gwen asked seriously. They are beings that cannot stand the heat, so most likely they will place climate machinery. They would be more or less like giant antennas that would allow them to generate an artificial climate and slowly terraform the area covered by that antenna. That also applies to their slaves. Things are yellow with brains. They also cannot stand the heat. Apart from that, they only have level 5 technology and some level 6. They do not have hyperjump, so they have to send explorers who will be in charge of building portals on the planets you want to eradicate, in order to travel from point A to point B, accessing hyperspace that way. Izuku responds somewhat thoughtfully, and then turns around and sees the unconscious Highbreed. Or so he thought, realizing that he was no longer in his place. He looked up when some pieces of metal fell from the ceiling, seeing and feeling how everything was shaking. By the worst ass, just what I needed, said Izuku, sighing heavily, before turning around and heading towards the destroyed wall. Where are you going? Magistrate Labrid asked seriously. Where this wretch went, to the control panel. This damned ship has a wide-barreled platoon cannon, and since these guys don't like to lose and will never accept it, it's most likely that hell will break loose once this thing is in the sky, said Izuku calmly. Then let's go deactivate this thing. He pauses briefly when Red Clock turns to look at him. And don't think we'll forget the fact that you're a villain after we solve this, Gwen said seriously, to which Izuku sighed. Look, sweetie, I know you're mad because I almost killed Izuku Midoriya, but keep that in mind, he almost killed me, so I just did the legendary eye for an eye, scar for a scar, Red Clock said simply, before continuing on his way, causing a light murmur from Gwen that no one understood. Literally on the other side of the wall was the control room, where the Highbreed was marking some coordinates, and then sneaking into a panel before destroying it. You're a bucking loser, sterile idiot, Izuku said boredly. Damn weak human, I swear that when we see each other again you will pay for this, said the Highbreed, pointing at Izuku with his ear. Whatever the infertile and sterile alien says, who only has super strength, endurance, flight, and can shoot spikes from his hands, I can literally shoot missiles. That's better than your shitty darts," Izuku said mockingly, walking towards him. The Highbreed clenched his fists with great anger and hatred, but at that moment, a light surrounded him, to which he sighed before disappearing and being teleported. "Marika," Izuku said before turning around and seeing the group of heroes. "We have to get out of here," said Red Clock simply. "We can't, we have to stop the ship," Gwen said seriously. "With what panel? I don't feel like using my galvanic mechamorpho form on you guys, and I doubt Ben has Sultrataya unlocked after his Omnitrix recalibration," Izuku said, passing by her. "And what do you plan to do?" asked the magistrate Labrid seriously, watching as Izuku was enveloped in a red light. "I'm going to take it down. The good thing is that I already took out all the Dnalians from this place with XLR-8, said Izuku, turned into Heat Blast. Then a tornado of fire was created and the 3 plumbers were swallowed up. The tornado then dissipated, revealing that all 4 had disappeared. Scene change. A fiery explosion was generated at the top of a building, followed by a fiery whirlwind that dissipated, revealing negative Heat Blast and the 3 plumbers. "How did you do that?" "I managed something similar when I had it, but I had to move while still wrapped in the fire tornado," Ben said, surprised and amazed. "I just have more practice with my aliens, it's nothing," said Izuku, watching the ship in the sky approaching the city. "At least you brought us to a good place. From here we can shoot the port," said Gwen, bringing her right hand to her left wrist and pointing with the fingers of her hands forward. "There's no need for that, I'll take care of it myself," Izuku said, raising both hands, with Gwen sighing. "And what do you plan to do?" Gwen asked, turning to look at him. "You just watch," said Heat Blast, smiling and winking, teasing her. He began to generate and manipulate fire between his hands, playing with it and shaping it. Then he stretches it out and brings his right hand back, forming a kind of fire arrow. "Enjoy this," Izuku said, smiling before shooting the fire arrow at the ship. Boom! A huge explosion was generated, treating it as if it were fireworks. Even from the other side of the city, the inhabitants of Mistreated managed to see the colossal explosion of reddish and yellowish fire, evidently eradicating the ship in its entirety. But the group of plumbers saw how Izuku put his hands together in palm, applauding and causing all the fire in front of them outside the city to be compressed into a single point, so that Izuku then snapped his fingers and the fire dissipated. "How the hell did you do it?" Ben asked incredulously. "Unlike you, I didn't spend my time playing and just gaining experience by becoming the villain, in your case the hero. I trained and trained for years to achieve this control of Heat Blast, and believe me, it's not just with this transformation, it's with all of them in their entirety where I managed to control each of their abilities and how to deal with their weaknesses," Izuku said in a calm but severe manner, and then returned to his human form. "And with more reason you should be put behind bars, you are a threat," said the magistrate Labrid seriously. "I agree, you are a hopeless villain. After everything you did, sooner or later you will end up causing chaos that nothing can fix," said Ben seriously. "I don't consider myself a villain as such, but rather someone morally ambiguous. Let's say I'm halfway between anti-villain and anti-hero. I do as much evil as I do as much good," Izuku said thoughtfully. "And why do you do it? Why do you do all this?" asked Gwen, looking at him seriously. It was still impossible for her to see his aura. She could see something on his chest that dissipated his aura and mana around him, literally making him invisible to her and her magic and anodite senses. Just a decision made by a young and immature me, and with a plan in mind and a promise that if I want to fulfill it I have to be powerful and strong, but to achieve all that I have to get some things and achieve something that benefits many," Izuku answers calmly. "And that's it?" Gwen asked seriously and severely. "Someday you will know Gwendolyn Tennyson," Izuku said before disappearing in a flash of red light. "Because I'm not surprised he can teleport," said Ben, sighing and sitting on the edge of the building. "He's definitely someone to watch out for. We need to come up with plans for when he gets out of control or we get a chance to catch him," said the magistrate Labrid seriously. "We should continue. We regret that it is useless now, and knowing our grandfather, he will surely be in trouble, especially if he does not arrive on time for his anniversary with the Green Grandmother, said Gwen, causing Ben to tremble. Don't remind me, I still remember when he got angry that day when I destroyed his garden with Wildmutt, said Ben, to which Gwen gave herself a facepalm. Sometimes I am surprised by your stupidity, even when you have potential for study, Gwen said, sighing. Scene change. Sigh. What a night. Ag, damn sterile alien, Albedo, that hurts, said Izuku, sitting on the chair in his laboratory, with Albedo disinfecting his wounds, with him without anything from the waist up. Don't complain, it's your fault for wanting every wound to be reflected in every transformation of yours, even the human one, Albedo said seriously, with a bottle of alcohol in her hand and wetting cotton with it. And I won't back down, it's a way of training. I get stronger after recovering and my body adapts to the pain in my skin, muscles and bones get stronger, and yes, I have swamp fire and other alien forms to speed that up, but it doesn't work the way I want, my body wouldn't adapt properly, Izuku said, feeling Albedo disinfect the wounds on his back. I growl lightly, enduring the pain. It's over. Only the bandages are missing, Albedo said, to which Izuku sighed. And as she said, she carefully but properly placed the bandages on Izuku's head. And once that was done, he let himself fall back, landing his head on the girl's thighs. You became very spoiled, besides, you are no longer ashamed to sleep on my thighs, Albedo said with a smile, to caress Izuku's jet black hair with green highlights. I'm already used to it, said Izuku reluctantly. I'd say you've adapted more to our proximity, said Albedo, to which Izuku laughed softly. Yes, it's more like that, Izuku said, smiling and relaxing. And what do you plan to do with those guys? They'll be a problem in the future, those incestuous idiots, Albedo said, curious and disgusted. The Highbreed, it's a matter of time. If I move the pieces on the board right and give Tennyson a push, all of this will be solved with him using the genetic recovery function that the Omnitrix has, and he will restore the Highbreed's DNA by mixing it with the DNA in the Omnitrix. With that, they will be fertile again and no longer be sterile, but for that, we should have a Highbreed on our side to appease those of their kind, Izuku said somewhat thoughtfully. Do you already have everything planned? Ha, because I'm not surprised, Albedo said, shaking her head and smiling. You always have to have plans, even plans now if they fail, Izuku said, smiling proudly. But he complained of pain when Albedo tapped him on the chest. Now rest, you earned it, hero, said Albedo mockingly. Don't call me hero, it's horrible, it feels bad to be called that way, said Izuku, sighing, to which Albedo shook her head. As you wish, I understand, human of good morals? I mean, you literally did a good deed, somehow he has to name you for that, Albedo said thoughtfully, but only felt Izuku settle on her thighs. Let's leave it here, I want to sleep, said Izuku, closing his eyes. Feeling Albedo caress his hair, in front of him, two other Albedo worked together with clones of himself. Scene change. I had to admit, the results were pretty good. Although now there was another problem. Izuku Midoriya, showing himself to be superior to Almight, but above all, to the Omnitrix wearer. You look distressed, did something bad happen? Said a voice from the darkness. It's not a big deal, just that brat Midoriya and how he does whatever he wants, said another angry voice. Hey, relax old friend, anyway, the plans we have against Ben Tennyson will also apply to him once the Omnitrix bearer dies, said the first voice with amusement. Yes, I'll take that into account, but in the meantime, I'll make sure to keep him out of the way and controlled as much as I can. I don't want all my plans to be ruined by a 15-year-old brat, said the second voice, annoyed. Relax, anyway, we still have plenty of time for our plans to be carried out, said the first voice, walking forward and revealing who it was. I hope so, and don't get too confident either, these brats tend to be unpredictable, Cervantes, said the second voice seriously, seeing a hybrid of human and the Cerebrant species, wearing a dark plumber's suit. Rest assured, I'll keep that in mind, all for one, Cervantes said with a smile at his villainous ally, who smiled just as he did.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.